In today's video, we will be planning an answer to a 20-marker criminal law question. So let's get right in. The two most important things you should know about answering a 20-marker question is A01 and A02. So A01 is about demonstrating your knowledge and understanding about the criminal law. And you need to fully develop and make sure that your demonstration of the knowledge and understanding is detailed. And you need to cite relevant statutes and case law. So all of that is A01. For murder, the A01 would be the definition of murder. And then you could use case law to further develop your definition for murder. Then you've got A02, which is the application of the legal rules. So it's the application of your A01 to the given scenario to present a legal argument. Your argument needs to be accurate, fully developed and detailed, and it needs to be filled with legal terminology. Here's the scenario. Here's the question we will be doing today. The first thing I like to do when I read a question is read the question first and then the scenario. So advise whether Jane is criminally liable for the murder of Susan and the murder of Susan's unborn child. Let's analyze the question here. It's actually a two-part question. Advise whether Jane is criminally liable for the murder of Susan, and advise whether Jane is criminally liable for the murder of Susan's unborn child. So we have to analyze Jane's criminal liability towards both Susan and her unborn child. Okay, the scenario. Susan plays the guitar in a successful popular music group around the country. Susan is several months pregnant and has said she will have to stop playing soon. This upset the lead singer, Jane, who wants to start a world tour next month. At the latest concert, Jane says some horrible things about Susan to the audience. This upsets Susan. She asks Jane to stop. Instead, Jane kicks Susan in the stomach. Susan is rushed to the hospital, where she is told that her unborn child has died as a result of the kick to her stomach. Jane goes to see Susan in hospital. This causes an argument. During the argument, Jane hits Susan over the head with a chair, crushing her skull. Susan dies immediately. Well, that was a very graphic scenario. Take some time to digest that scenario because that was some heavy content. The planning of an answer starts as soon as you read the question and the scenario. As soon as you read the scenario, you should already be planning in your head what you're going to write. Your plan is going to start off with murder and its definition. Then you're going to look at the actus reus of murder, causation and mens rea. The whole A01. Straight away we should know whether Jane would be criminally liable for the murder of Susan. That we should know straight away. We know she satisfies the actus reus of murder towards Susan. Then we just need to look at the mens rea. Does she satisfy the mens rea? Well, yeah, she gets upset over time, so she says horrible things about Susan. She gets upset, she kicks Susan in the stomach at first, and then after that she gets a chair and whacks her with it. So it's quite clear she has direct intent, so therefore she has mens rea. She has direct intent to do GBH, therefore she satisfies the mens rea. That's about it for Susan. Then we need to look at her child, and we need to think the definition of the actus reus for murder is that it needs to be the unlawful killing of a human being. In criminal law, this sounds very bizarre, but in criminal law, an unborn child is not classed as a human being. Therefore, you can't be criminally liable for murder for killing of an unborn child, if that makes sense. So let's take a look at the plan to the answer. First, like I said, the definition of murder should be memorized. A good definition for murder that includes all the technical legal terminology. You want all of that memorized so you can just write that down straight away. The first thing you write down is the definition of murder. Then you write the actus reus to get more A01 marks, and you explain it's the unlawful killing of a human being under King's peace. You got the two cases, V.A. and R.V. Adams, which explain the actus reus. V.A. explains unlawful and R.V. Adam explains the killing. Then after we look at the actus reus, we need to think how we are going to apply all of what we have defined here in the A01 onto the scenario. unlawful. So we think actus reus, unlawful killing of a human being. Then we look to the part of the scenario. Jane hits Susan's head with a chair, crushing her skull. The unlawful act is Jane crushing her head with a chair, and she had no legal justification, and therefore she has no defense whatsoever. She satisfies the unlawful killing of a human being. Susan is obviously a human being, and then we need to explain that it's under the king's peace. They're not in war, there's no war happening. And then we need to look at the killing. Did her act accelerate the death? If it didn't, then she wouldn't be liable, but here it obviously did, and therefore she satisfies the actus reus of murder. Easy as that. Next we look at causation, factual and legal causation. For factual causation, it's the but-for test, which is R.V. White. For legal causation, it's defendant's actions need to be significant, which is R.V. Paget. How are we going to apply what we've explained, the legal rules and principle? We go to the scenario, look for a bit to quote, and then just create our argument based from that. To get the A02, we need to have the A01. Without the A01, we can't have the A02. The A02 is built on the A01. So, but for Jane hitting Susan's head with a chair, she wouldn't have died. That's easy. And then we look at legal causation. Her action was the sole cause of her death. Her action was the sole cause of Susan's death, and it was significant as her skull was crushed. There we go. That was easy, and there was no intervening acts. And then mens rea. Mens rea is the intention to cause a GBH or kill, which is R.V. Mohan. And then we need to apply that to the scenario. So we look at the scenario. Did she show that she had intention? Yes, it did. As we were looking through the scenario, we already explained how it showed that she had the intention to do GBH. Therefore, she'd be liable for Susan's death because she satisfies all the elements of the offence for murder, and therefore she's liable for Susan's death. So that's the first part of the question. The second part is if she's liable for the death of the child, and that's the next bit. So we look at the legal definition of a human being. It requires that the baby be fully born and be alive. A fetus isn't considered a human being, and the case we use to prove that is AG's reference number 3. Susan's baby wasn't born alive, and we come to the conclusion that Jane wouldn't be convicted of murder for the baby's death. And that's a level 4 plan for this 20 marker answer. So when writing your answer, structuring your answer correctly is very important, because if your answer is not structured well, it's going to be difficult for the examiner to read through. It's going to be difficult for you to plan your answer as you're writing it, because you have very limited time, and you need to plan as you're writing. You need to be constantly thinking. Another thing to keep in mind is how to structure each paragraph. First, you should start off with your A01 and then move on to the A02, because the A02, as we've seen, is always built from the A01. And that wraps it up for this video. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.